You are not here by accident. It doesn't matter if this video found you unexpectedly, a suggested algorithm, a curious click, or even a recommendation you didn't fully understand. You are here because something within you yearned for this. Something in you craved answers, cried out for acceptance, for recognition, and perhaps unconsciously you came because you needed to remember, to reconnect with your warrior essence, with the inner king you are when the superficial fades, with what you feel, even when words fail. You needed to remember the instinctive, visceral strength that resides within you, a deep spiritual energy, the wild, vibrant power of the spiritual warrior. In this video, we'll explore 5 subtle signs, according to Robert Moore, that reveal if you are one of these men, one of these warriors, but don't expect a trivial list. Here you won't just superficially identify, you'll see yourself reflected in the archetypes and perhaps understand, for the first time, why the ET world has always reacted peculiarly to your presence. Why silence has never been empty for you, but a portal to your center. Why people open up so easily, as if they've known you from other lives, recognizing the king within you. Why places seem to transform, to energize with your arrival, with the strength of your warrior. Robert Moore teaches us that what is not recognized manifests as destiny, and often your energy, the energy of the king, already weaves narratives, creates reality before you even enter the scene. Perhaps you've always felt you carry something unique, an inner light, the warrior's sword, that no one taught you to ignite, but which has always been there, part of your profound nature. Perhaps you grew up feeling like you didn't belong, a lone wolf, or belonging to everything simultaneously, the king in his domain. But what few understand is that deep spiritual energy, the archetype of the warrior, doesn't manifest with fanfare. It reveals itself in quietude, in calm, in the subtlety of the warrior who transforms without demanding explanations. And this is the first sign, perhaps the most neglected, the most misunderstood, and paradoxically, the most sacred. Your presence transforms effortlessly. You don't need to speak much, you don't need to prove anything, you don't need to show off, you just need to be the king, to be the warrior. And that is enough. You already understand this intuitively, even if no one has verbalized it, even if no one has validated this perception. You feel the shift in the air, in the atmosphere, in the energy of the place when you arrive, like a king entering his castle. And it's not about charisma, likability, or social skills. It's a matter of vibratory coherence, the invisible alignment, as Robert Moore describes it, between what you feel and what you emanate. And this is rare, extremely rare, because we live in a world of internal conflicts, of wounded magicians, where most people are disconnected from themselves, from their archetypes. People say what they don't feel. They believe what they don't experience. They defend ideas they barely understand. And when you arrive with your integral presence, your exposed soul, your judgment-free silence, the silent strength of the warrior, something moves. Barriers dissolve, masks weaken, tension dissipates. Have you noticed this? Have you observed how people transform around you, as if your presence reminds them of their own essence, their own archetypes, as if your soul recognizes their soul? Even if the mind resists, it's not illusion, it's resonance. Robert Moore helps us understand this. You don't impose truths, but they emerge naturally in your presence. You don't demand confessions, but they flow spontaneously. You don't try to heal, but your energy heals unintentionally. And this is where the first conflict arises, because being this presence is beautiful, but it can also be lonely, the burden of the king. You give without realizing it. You embrace without intending to. You support without being asked. And when you leave, you feel lightened for others, but you carry a weight. Robert Moore explores this phenomenon. It's as if others unconsciously project onto you, onto the archetype of the king, what they cannot bear within themselves, and you, with your generous soul, absorb it. But no one asks how you are, because everyone assumes you're always fine, that the king never falters. You, who are the support of others, rarely find support. You who listen to what no one else hears are rarely heard. And even so, you continue. You continue to be a beacon in the chaos, a safe harbor in the storm, the silence that embraces. But until when? Until when will you hide your strength, the strength of your warrior? Until when will you deny is your sensitivity masked by a fear of appearing vulnerable? How long will you try to fit into a world vibrating at a different frequency than your own? A world that has forgotten its archetypes. You always have. Children see you differently. Animals approach you naturally. People you've just met confide secrets they've held for years. It's no coincidence. Your energy, the energy of the king and the warrior, offers refuge, a silent sanctuary. Not a refuge promising salvation, but one whispering, you can be yourself here. And that's magic, because there's no effort, no pretense, no drama. It simply is. And that is revolutionary. But do you allow yourself to be that king, that warrior? Or have you lost yourself in the role of invisible savior? How many times have you silenced your own pain so another could shine? How many times have you buried your own needs to maintain harmony? How many times have you pretended not to notice something to avoid hurting anyone? You feel everything, recognize everything, but you've learned to numb yourself to survive. Your soul yearns to breathe, to express the warrior, but the world demands performance. Your essence wants to expand, to assume the mantle of the king, but the world asks for restraint, and you hid. But the time has come to remember, to reconnect with Robert Moore, and the truth that your energy is a gift, not a burden, that your sensitivity is wisdom, not weakness, that you didn't come to please but to vibrate, not to dilute yourself, but to express yourself. And the first step to remembering is recognizing that the transformation you generate is not ordinary, that this silent impact you make is no accident. It's a sign, a clue, a reflection of what you carry, the strength of the king, the presence of the warrior. You possess powerful spiritual energy, and the world needs it. Not molded, not disguised, not diminished, but whole. And perhaps that's why you've felt out of place for so long. You weren't strange, you were intense, a warrior in a world of commoners. You weren't inadequate, you were sensitive, a misunderstood king. You weren't weak, you were profound, connected to the archetypes. And now that you know, what will you do with this power? Because the next sign will reveal even more. Not just what you feel, but what you see, even when no one else notices, even when the world pretends everything is fine, and you, with the intuition of the warrior, know it's not. In the next chapter, we will explore the second sign, the one that reveals your ability to see the invisible, to feel the unspoken, to read the world with the eyes of the soul, with the vision of the magician. But for now, breathe, feel, recognize. You are coming home to your archetypes and your energy vibrates again. Perhaps no one has told you this so clearly, but you already know. You see what no one else wants to see. It's not a talent, it's not a gift you asked for. It is rather a channel that has always been open, the intuition of the magician, and one you've spent your whole life trying to decipher. When you enter a room, you feel, even before words are spoken, something within you, the watchful warrior, has already begun to read the atmosphere. The way someone avoids eye contact, the slight tension in the shoulders of someone smiling too much, the awkward silence between two people feigning harmony, you perceive it first. And this, despite seeming like a superpower, the vision of the magician is exhausting, because while the world spins quickly and superficially, you carry the weight, or perhaps the blessing, of perceiving what is out of place. And it's not just that, you feel it in your body. You feel the anxiety that doesn't belong to you. You feel the anguish of those nearby. You feel the atmosphere of a house before you even touch the doorknob. Perhaps that's why you prefer cozy places, authentic faces, conversations with pauses, simple rituals. You're tired of pretending you don't feel, but you're also tired of being labeled as intense, dramatic, or paranoid. It's difficult to explain to others what your body, connected to the archetypes, already knows. It's difficult to convince someone that that seemingly perfect relationship is falling apart from within. It's difficult. Have you ever wondered why you crave silence so much? Why, after a day immersed in the energies of so many other souls, all you desire is a sanctuary where no one asks anything of you, where you don't have to wear the social smile, explain, or interact, where you can simply be, in your deepest essence, in your inner king, as Robert Moore would say? Most people don't understand this need. They interpret it as withdrawal, coldness, an escape from reality, a refusal of the warrior to engage with the world. But in your heart, At the center of yourself, as Robert Moore points out, that it's not about escaping the world, but about returning to your true inner home, to your authentic self, that sacred space of the magician. It's curious how, in a world increasingly saturated with noise and stimulation, your soul, your connection to the lover, whispers for a balm of silence. Not an empty silence, but a silence that reorganizes the deepest layers of your being, that integrates the archetypes, as Robert Moore describes. The silence that calms even the unconscious thoughts, the fears of the pure that cried out without you realizing. The silence that returns a fragment of yourself to yourself, reconnecting you with the receptive energy of the Queen. How many times have you felt misunderstood for this primal need, this quest for the totality of the self, as Robert Moore would emphasize? Have you ever heard someone say, "You seem so distant," a criticism of the magician's detachment, or even, "Is everything all right? You withdraw so much," a misunderstanding of the need for introspection, essential to the hero's journey, as Robert Moore shows us? Oh, as if your absence were a flaw to be corrected by Robert Moore, instead of a sacred act of self-care, of soul nourishment, a dive into the deep waters of the unconscious, as the magician invites us to do. But let's be honest, when was the last time someone respected your silence, the language of the magician, without invading it with questions, without trying to penetrate your sacred space, the king's castle? Few people understand, as Robert Moore reveals, that solitude is the fertile ground where we rebuild ourselves, where the fragments the day fractured within us, the wounds of the warrior, can finally recompose themselves under the light of our own presence, under the wisdom of the elder. You don't need crowds, you need a spacious and welcoming inner space, a space for the king to rule serenely. It's not that you don't delight in the company of other souls, in the dance of the lover. It's simply that your sensitive energy, the intuition of the Queen, can't withstand for long the energetic disorganization emanating from dense environments, from the shadow of the tyrant. There's something in you, an intuitive wisdom, the gift of the magician, as Robert Moore would describe, that opposes forced environments, superficial conversations, the incessant urgency of the outside world, the frantic pace of the unbalanced warrior. Does anyone notice that that smiling soul, the lover's mask, is on the verge of collapse, of the shadow of the poor? It's difficult to articulate why you feel so uncomfortable in places where everyone seems to radiate joy, the superficiality of the lover without depth. And so you learn to be silent, to wear the mask of serenity, the warrior's armor, to not intervene, to not disturb the dance of appearances, the social theater of the poor. But inside you the sensations still vibrate, a persistent echo of truth, the voice of the elder. Do you remember the time you felt a palpable tension in your workplace, an energetic imbalance, as Robert Moore would point out, even before a conflict manifested? You couldn't explain, translate into words, the subtle language of the magician. You simply knew, in your gut, in the wisdom of the Queen, that something was misaligned. And a few days later everything precipitated. The dissonance became visible, the shadow of the tyrant emerged. That look that averted from yours, the warrior's wound, that meeting that ended and abruptly, leaving a trail of unease, the anxiety of the poor. Very early on you learned to recognize the subtle signs, that inexplicable absence, the search for the magician's sanctuary, that unexpected visit to a friend, the longing for the lover's connection. Apparently everything seemed in perfect harmony. The conversation flowed smoothly, the coffee was served with affection, the Queen's kindness. But there was an impalpable sadness hanging in the air, a melancholy you felt in every cell of your being, the unprocessed pain of the wounded warrior. There was no music to camouflage it, the poor's distraction, nor laughter to stifle it, the superficial lover's denial. It was an old, unexpressed pain, suspended in the air, like the dust of ancestral memories, the forgotten wisdom of the elder. And you felt it even without understanding its origin, without having access to its history, without unraveling the mysteries of the unconscious, as Robert Moore encourages us. It's your life, isn't it? To read between the lines of the human soul, the Queen's gift, to feel what remains unsaid, the language of the magician, to live in a world where what hurts most is not the spoken words, but what hides behind the social masks, the shadows of the archetypes, as Robert Moore brilliantly describes. And the worst part is that you frequently doubt yourself, the insecurity of the poor. You question yourself, am I exaggerating? Am I the source of this discomfort? The doubt of the wounded queen. But time, like a wise master, like Robert Moore's elder, always ends up confirming your perceptions. The truth, like water, always finds its way to the surface. Unconscious revelation, as Robert Moore teaches us. Too late. And do you remember then? I knew. You always knew on some deep level of your being in the innate wisdom of the magician. Robert Moore reminds us that the unconscious, the realm of the magician, is what truly guides us, even when we believe we're in command, in the illusion of the ego. And you learn to hear the subtle voice of your unconscious, the whispers of the magician. But this sensitivity comes at a price, for in capturing all the energetic nuances, you also overload yourself with the weight of the world, the burden of the compassionate warrior. And when you don't know how to filter these energies, your body falls ill, the fragility of the poor, your soul is depleted, the weariness of the queen. Your sleep becomes an unknown territory, the labyrinth of the unconscious, as Robert Moore would explore. How many times have you slept with your body tense, the warrior on guard, as if carrying the burden of humanity? How many times have you woken up more exhausted than when you went to bed, the queen drained? And then the cruel doubt arises. Am I the one who is sick? The fear of the pure. Where did I absorb all this energy that doesn't belong to me? The queen's questioning. The world never taught you how to deal with this heightened sensitivity, the misunderstood gift of the magician. At school you learned geography, chemistry, calculus, the tools of the warrior, but nobody told you how to navigate saturated energy fields, the unexpressed pain of others, the weight of being a living antenna for the pain of others, the compassion of the queen. You were thrown into the world without an instruction manual for your soul, without a guide for the hero's journey, as Robert Moore would offer, and yet you survived. You learned, through your own experiences, to decipher the signals of your body, to respect the whispers of your soul, to integrate your archetypes, as Robert Moore would encourage, to step back before imploding, to honor the wisdom of the elder. But sometimes it's too late. You stay longer than you should, the warrior's trap. You remain silent when you should speak your truth, the puer's shadow. You sink so that the other person can float, the queen's sacrifice, and it costs you dearly. Perhaps this is why you take refuge from the chaos of crowds, the need to preserve the queen's energy. You prefer the gentle embrace of the rain to the agitation of a crowd of unknown faces, the magician's search for solitude. You hide behind a book, music, or restorative silence, the elder's introspection. It's not that you hate people, the queen's compassion, but you can't bear to show them what they refuse to see in themselves, the magician's mirror. You live as a mirror, a reflection without distortions, the elder's clarity. And that's why your presence can be frightening, because the world is accustomed to smooth, molded reflections, sweetened by illusion, the puer's superficiality. But when they look at you, they see themselves in their nakedness, and that can cause discomfort, the resistance to the shadow, as Robert Moore would explain. Have you noticed that some people avoid you for no apparent reason? How some people distance themselves after a deep conversation, as if your presence were a projector that illuminates the shadows they prefer to keep hidden. The fear of transformation that Robert Moore describes. It's not your fault. It's your frequency, your unique vibration, your soul, the strength of yourself, as Robert Moore would say. That doesn't bend to lies. You don't need to try. You simply arrive and something changes. And this change can be beautiful, the lover's dance, but it can also be painful, the confrontation with the shadow, because not everyone is prepared to face their own truth, the warrior's challenge. Not everyone wants to feel the depth of your emotions, the intensity of the queen. Not everyone wants to awaken the hero's journey, as Robert Moore reminds us. And here arises another dilemma. If my energy is so intense, the strength of myself, as Robert Moore would say, should I hide it under the veil of mediocrity? Should I be silent so as not to disturb them in their spiritual sleep? Should I erase myself to be accepted by the sleeping masses? But to extinguish your light is to extinguish your essence, to deny the gift, the authentic expression of the self, as Robert Moore inspires us, that you brought into the world. And that's what you've been doing for a long time, perhaps unconsciously, in the shadow of the poor. The truth is that you don't need to fix anyone. The warrior doesn't need to save everyone. You didn't bring the world into the world. You don't need to prove anything to anyone except yourself. The hero's inner journey, as Robert Moore guides us. You simply need to recognize yourself. Recognize that this sensitivity is a type of spiritual intelligence, that this deep perception is a type of emotional wisdom, as Robert Moore teaches us, and that it can be cared for, cultivated, enhanced, not as armor against the world, the warrior's trap, but like a compass pointing to your true north, the elder's wisdom. What you feel is real, even if no one else feels it, even if people doubt you, even if they treat you like you're exaggerating. You are made of layers the world hasn't taught you to decipher, the archetypes within you, as Robert Moore would describe, but which your soul recognizes as the language of your own truth. That's why you feel everything, even what's veiled, hidden beneath the surface, the Queen's intuition. Robert Moore would describe this as the power of the inner magician, the ability to access the invisible, to translate what lies beyond words, the language of the soul. And this, your skin, a sacred parchment engraved with the archetypes of the king, perceives the echoes and rumbles of the world, as if each pore were a portal to the soul. And when the disharmony intensifies, when the outer clamor profanes, your essence, a silent call resonates from within. Retreat to your center, and you withdraw, for you have learned from Robert Moore, into the sanctuary of your being, that individuation resides in stillness. Have you noticed, brother, how after a period of solitude the world reveals itself in a new light, a clarity of the soul, as if the fog of the persona dissipates, revealing the life force of all things, as if the eyes of your perception are purified by the water of life, allowing your warrior heart to breathe freely, expanding into compassion. But what happens when life in its heroic journey doesn't grant you this refuge? When the challenges and demands of the world drag you from side to side, suffocating your longing for quietude, for reconnection with the self? On those days, a deep weariness settles in, an exhaustion that doesn't originate in the physical body but in the soul, in the very core of your warrior being. It's as if your vital energy, your creative force, is draining away through invisible wounds, leaving you exhausted and fragmented, disconnected from your purpose. Have you ever woken up tired, even after a long night's sleep? Have you ever felt the irresistible desire to disconnect from the world, to retreat to the forest for a few days without a trace, without explanation, not out of selfishness or whim, but out of a deep need to reconnect with your essence, to nourish your soul, famished for silence, to reconcile with the archetype of the magician? Share your experience here, brother. Acknowledge this vital need. Robert Moore teaches us to honor our solitude, to value the sacred space of our being. Say yes, or simply, Robert Moore illuminated my path now. Perhaps another warrior on their heroic journey will find resonance in your words. It's essential that we talk about this, because the world, in its incessant search for distraction, devalues silence and solitude. Being alone is often interpreted as a sign of weakness, of imbalance, of something being wrong. But what if the opposite were true? What if solitude were the most courageous choice, the most authentic path to individuation and healing? Robert Moore reminds us that he who looks outward dreams, but he who looks inward awakens to his true self. And to look inward, the noise must cease. How many times have you tried to understand yourself amidst the chaos, tried to hear the whispers of your intuition with thousands of voices competing for your attention? It's impossible, brother. Your soul needs silence to listen, to express itself, to reveal itself in its fullness. For you, solitude is not an escape, but a sacred temple, a sanctuary where you meet your truth, where wounds heal without judgment, where inner strength blossoms without witnesses. It is in this space of quietude that useless words dissolve, revealing the essence of your warrior being, the wisdom of the king. Have you noticed that your best ideas, your clearest visions, arise in moments of solitude, during deep meditation, a walk in nature, a moment of silent contemplation? It's no coincidence, brother. It's life showing you that you are more creative, more intuitive, more connected to your inner source, to the magician within you when you are whole. And you are only whole when you are with yourself. But this requires courage, the courage to look yourself in the face without the distractions of the outside world, the courage to hear the truths you've been ignoring, the courage to accept that your inner peace may require some distance from what the world considers normal. Have you felt this? Have you been in a place where everyone was laughing while something inside you remained silent? Have you participated in a conversation and wondered, what is my purpose here? It's your vibrational frequency, your essence, telling you, this is not your place of power. Believe me, brother, this is not arrogance, it's sensitivity. It's the wisdom of your soul, guided. But most of the lover archetype guides you to your true path. You need solitude to avoid getting lost, to remember your original vibration when the world tries to mold you in its image, to remember that we didn't come here to adapt to every environment, but to honor those that make our souls flourish. They say solitude hurts, but perhaps what truly hurts is being with others and feeling alone. Have you experienced this? Have you been surrounded by people and felt an inner emptiness? The pain might not be from absence, but from disconnection with your essence, your truth. And perhaps that's why, even deeply loving some people, you need distance from time to time. Not because you don't love them, but because your energy needs to root, to silence, to breathe, to connect with the earth. And when you return, you come back renewed, stronger, more centered, more you. After all, you don't disappear out of disdain, but to rediscover yourself, to return whole. But have you respected this need or sabotaged yourself, labeling it as weakness, wasted time, a betrayal of the warrior? Have you prioritized what truly strengthens you, or are you always at the disposal of others, even when everything within you cries for a pause, for a return to the source of your inner strength? Perhaps it's time to better observe your internal rhythms, to accept that your way of being is different, that your energy needs to be preserved, that you have the right and the duty to take care of yourself. No one will do this for you. The world won't stop to give you a break. It's up to you to create this pause, this oxygen bubble, this silent embrace. And when you do, you'll notice something extraordinary. Your energy renews, your creativity resurfaces, anger dissolves, intuition blossoms. Because solitude, when lived well, is not an absence, but a pure presence. And if you've come this far in this reading, it's because you know, you feel, even if you can't name it. So tell me, what was the most transformative moment you experienced alone, connected with the archetypes of your soul? Share your experience, even if a few words suffice. Perhaps your story will inspire other souls to integrate into silence. Robert Moore teaches us that life conditions us to look outward, but it's time to turn inward, to the archetypal center of our being, to the inner warrior residing in each of us, there where no intruder penetrates, where no shadow demands of us, where we can simply be, and being, in its warrior-like and integral essence, is everything. You have been so many things to so many people. You have played so many archetypal roles. You held the world in silence, like the king who sustains his kingdom. You smiled while it hurt, with the stoic strength of the warrior. But now it's time to return home to your interior, because within your silence there is a temple, a sanctuary of the masculine soul, and in that temple there is only one being, you, in your archetypal totality. In the next episode, we will talk about what happens when you return from this inner temple, when you return to the world with your soul restored, with the warrior and the king integrated, and, without you having to say a word, everything begins to change around you. You will discover that your energy reorganizes the environment, and that even without wanting to, you become a healing agent for the world. It's not easy to explain what happens. You enter a place and something changes. You don't say anything. You don't make any gesture. You don't impose yourself like a silent king on his throne. But the air seems different. A sudden lightness, an involuntary pause, a change of tone, as if the inner magician had performed a subtle alchemy. Sometimes someone breathes deeper. Sometimes a candle is lit for no apparent reason, a symbol of the rekindled inner flame. Sometimes silence is more comforting than any conversation, a reflection of the deep wisdom of the elder. Have you experienced this? Arriving in a crowded environment and noticing in a few seconds that the rhythm has changed, as if the lover brought harmony to chaos. or being with someone agitated and noticing that beside you, that person begins to calm down without knowing why, touched by the serenity of the king. It's not an impression. It's what Robert Moore calls an energetic coherence field, the resonance of archetypes in action. And although this still seems mystical to many, science is beginning to recognize that bodies communicate in a subtle, almost imperceptible but real way. The HeartMath Institute in the United States has been studying for decades the influence of the human heart's electromagnetic field, as Robert Moore reminds us. According to their researchers, the heart generates a field around the body up to 5,000 times larger than that generated by the brain, and this field influences not only our internal state, but also the emotional and physiological state of those around us. In other words, your presence it affects others even without words, even without action. It transmits, and what you transmit, the strength of your integrated archetypes, reorganizing what's around you. But this isn't about performative energy, exaggerated or over-spiritualized, as Robert Moore would say. We're talking about the peace born from the integration of archetypes, the calm that emanates only from those who have gone deep enough within themselves, those who don't seek to prove, convince, or conquer, because they have already conquered themselves. Have you noticed this? Have you observed that when you are centered, like a king in his power, even those who are agitated tend to shift their posture around you, as if something in you acknowledges the possibility of rest, the tranquil strength of the warrior at peace, as if the chaotic, hurried, disconnected outer world is suspended for a moment by your silent frequency, by the archetypal resonance you carry. This happens frequently, but it's rarely named. After all, how do you explain a conversation becoming more honest simply because you're there, emanating the wisdom of the elder? Or how someone finally manages to speak about a past trauma after years of silence, simply because you listened without interrupting, with the compassion of the lover? It's not coincidence, it's vibration, the resonance of archetypes in harmony. Your energy acts as an emotional accelerator, but not in the sense of pressure, but of permission, as Robert Moore reminds us. Have you ever been with someone who allowed you to feel more like yourself? Someone who didn't say much, but created a space of safety, like the king protecting his kingdom. Someone with whom time seemed to stop, and your breath returned to its natural rhythm, guided by the wisdom of the elder. Have you been that person for someone? And perhaps the soul whispers the language of archetypes, and often we don't hear it. A woman shared a moving story with me. Her patient, in profound silence during the session, took a deep breath after long minutes and confessed, tears in her eyes, "It's the first time in years I've felt peace beside someone, and you didn't say anything." This experience resonates in so many lives, like a soft echo of the authentic presence of the integrated king and warrior. People remember the archetypal essence you emanate, the silent resonance more than any spoken word. They feel your absence, a subtle weight in the air when you leave, a lightness that permeates the environment when you arrive, as if the inner magician had left their mark. An internal shift, a new perspective emerging effortlessly, just by you being, by embodying the totality of your archetypes. Perhaps this causes strangeness, even a certain apprehension, because genuine transformation, the kind that vibrates with peace, often arises from the simple act of existing, of being a peaceful warrior, a compassionate king. The world pulsates with dissonances, with voices that hide feelings, with environments laden with subtle tensions, even in the colors of the walls. And then, your serene presence emerges, without competition, without imposition, without desires, like the quietude of a king on his throne. Simply by being, you shift stagnant energies, like a silent invitation from the lover to authenticity. You can stop, breathe, be real here. But not everyone welcomes this call. Some distance themselves, uncomfortable with the warrior's strength. Others react with irritation, accusing you of disturbing the false harmony, the carefully constructed facade. The truth, when it emerges with the clarity of the elder, isn't always comfortable. Have you felt this reverberation? Upon entering a seemingly harmonious group, do submerged conflicts come to the surface? You are not the cause, but your vibration, the strength of your integrated archetypes, reveals the illusion, and this frightens, because many prefer artificial Peace to the truth in motion. Robert Moore reminds us that the awakening of the soul makes the ego tremble. Repressed feelings emerge, bonds are reconfigured, internal order reorganizes itself with the help of the inner magician. The world may accuse you of creating chaos, but you've only brought to light what could no longer be ignored. You are the mirror that reflects without distorting, and the reflection doesn't always please. But perhaps, more than pleasing, it liberates. After resistance comes relief, reconnection, transformation. Deep changes happen without you lifting a finger, just by being present, maintaining your truth, nurturing inner peace, like a king who governs with wisdom and compassion. A woman in one of our meetings observed, "Since I connected with our videos, my husband is calmer. He doesn't watch them, but my energy has transformed." This is the power of vibratory coherence, the resonance of archetypes in harmony, which is contagious, organizes, communicates, even with the invisible. A withered plant that blooms after a silent conversation, a fearful animal that approaches with confidence, objects that start working again after an energetic cleansing. Quantum physics speaks of fields of influence, waves, entanglement. Robert Moore speaks of the vibratory harmony of the collective unconscious, where everything connects, even without logical explanation. Your energy touches the invisible, transforms it, even if no one sees, for it carries the strength of the inner magician. Therefore, take care of yourself, because this transformation consumes energy. Maintaining coherence in a chaotic world demands the strength of the warrior. But the transformation you generate is real. Even if it's not applauded, even if it's not named, it is felt. Your presence is the pause that allows for breath, the silence that enables listening, the space where everything is revealed, like the serene presence of a king. Embrace this presence, honor it, protect it, acknowledge its impact. Acknowledgement is the first step to acting with the wisdom of the elder. Have you experienced this transformation through presence? Share your story. Be living proof of this power. By sharing, you help others recognize their own archetypal strength. Sometimes all a soul needs is to know it's not alone. A time comes when the body no longer lies. You feel you no longer belong in certain places, conversations, relationships, not out of impatience or selectivity, but because your energy has become a filter, a spiritual radar that pulses coherence and repels what doesn't resonate with your archetypal totality. It's not belief, it's awareness. When your vibration changes, your life changes. People, encounters, environments, everything transforms. Friendships dissolve without drama, invitations lose their luster, ideas fade. These aren't losses, they are realignments. Your soul, guided by the inner magician, clears the ground, removes what is dry, makes space for the new. And the new doesn't always come as we imagine, as a deep calling from the psyche. Often it arrives unexpectedly, as a sudden insight that bursts from the shadow. People may consider it distant, strange, arrogant, a reflection of their own unhealed wounds. But you are returning to yourself, to the inner warrior. And in this process, what doesn't vibrate at the same frequency moves away, like the skin shedding from a snake in its process of renewal. It hurts because you loved these people, believed in these places, dreamed of these projects. But love, faith, and dreams aren't enough when the price is your soul, the integrity of your wild self. Robert Moore reminds us that the encounter with the true self, with the inner king, is preceded by the collapse of the false identity, the superficial persona built to please the world. You feel displaced, the old structure crumbling. What sustained your life, the manipulative magician, no longer sustains your truth. But don't worry, this is energetic maturity, the awakening of the lover in its fullness. Your presence organizes your reality. Your coherence attracts what resonates with your vibration, like a magnet attracting iron. Have you experienced friendships that dissipated without explanation, invitations that lost their meaning, ideas that faded? These are realignments, your soul, guided by the divine king, preparing the ground for the new. It arrives in the form of silence, as a fertile emptiness, the dark earth of the soul, like this liminal phase where the soul seems suspended between worlds, between the known and the unknown. You look around and feel a familiar sense of not belonging, the anguish of separation from the old self, But the new dwelling, the king's castle, hasn't yet revealed itself. It's the invisible bridge woven between the old self and the true nature, the emerging self, as Robert Moore teaches us. Believe me, my friend, this is one of the most sacred moments of your journey of individuation, of integrating the archetypes. It is here in this silent womb that you learn to sustain your frequency without the crutch of external validation, the trap of the wounded magician, as Robert Moore shows us. You no longer expect approval, you don't seek applause, you don't measure your growth by the eyes of others. You simply feel, and what you feel, this instinctive wisdom of the body, the voice of the inner warrior, is enough to illuminate the path, as Robert Moore so wisely describes. It is then that you understand you no longer need to chase. What resonates with your energy comes naturally, like a river finding the sea, like the lover uniting with the beloved. What doesn't come was never yours to begin with. But trusting this subtle dance of life, as Robert Moore reminds us, is not easy. The mind, accustomed to control, the dominion of the immature magician, tries to seize the reins. Fear, a ghost of the future, projects shadows of anxiety, the poison of tyranny. The old self, thirsty for security, whispers promises of old patterns, the siren song of dependence. But something deeper, the voice of the soul, the calling of the inner king, knows there is no return. To go back would be a betrayal of one's own essence, as Robert Moore so eloquently articulates. It would be to extinguish the inner flame that has finally begun to shine, the flame of your authenticity, the warrior's strength. So you breathe, accept, allow, and the most beautiful orchestration begins, synchronicities, the flow of archetypal energy. The person you haven't seen in years reappears with a soul-touching message, as Robert Moore often observed, the video that pops up on your screen at the exact moment, the book that falls to the bookstore floor and opens to the page you needed to read, the casual conversation that transforms into a profound revelation. Everything conspires to guide you, the universe's dance, guided by the divine king. Not because you asked, with words, but because you vibrated with the truth of your being. As Robert Moore illuminated in his teachings, the universe, infinitely more sensitive than we imagine, responds to vibration, not to request. Notice this, my friend. The more you cling to what doesn't represent you, to what doesn't honor your wild self, the harder life becomes. But when you align with your essence, with the call of the inner king, even without knowing the next step, doors open gracefully, echoing Robert Moore's teachings. It's not magic, it's resonance, the harmony of archetypes. You attract what vibrates in your energy field. Therefore, the soul can no longer bear inhabiting spaces that don't nourish its light, however comfortable they may seem, as Robert Moore so deeply explored. How much have you invested in the measure of your experience in the fear of change, as Robert Moore invites us to reflect? Your energy now cries out for truth, and truth, like a ray of sunshine, transforms everything. Your relationships reconfigure, conversations deepen, superficial ties dissolve, encounters become rarer, yet infinitely more meaningful. You begin to discern who stays out of habit and who stays out of vibration, as Robert Moore encourages us to observe. And this clarity liberates, because you discover you no longer need to please to be loved, to contain your intensity to be accepted, to filter your light to avoid overshadowing anyone, as Robert Moore so beautifully expressed. You begin to live, fully to embody the inner king, and surprisingly the world doesn't reject you. It recognizes you. By revealing your true nature, you, as Robert Moore inspires us, allow others to do the same. And the magic operates, the synergy of archetypes in action. You attract people who speak the language of your soul, spaces where you don't need to explain yourself, opportunities that seem tailor-made, not because you forced them, but because you sustained your vibration, as Robert Moore emphasized. And this, my friend, changes everything. Perhaps this is the true meaning of miracle, not something external, but an internal transformation that blossoms when you stop fighting against who you are, as Robert Moore so wisely taught. If you've come this far, know that you are not alone. Thousands of souls, as Robert Moore reminds us, are aligning with their own frequency, awakening in silence, moving away from the false and turning towards the real. Your place is reserved. It always has been. It was just waiting for you to remember, as Robert Moore assures us. Now is the time to act, to bring the wisdom of your journey to the plane of action, as Robert Moore encourages us. It's not enough to know, to perceive. It's time to apply. Create rituals, set boundaries, choose consciously, nourish what draws you closer, release what has completed its cycle, and, above all, build a life that reflects your frequency, not the one the world expects, but the one your soul recognizes as home, as Robert Moore guides us. If you feel ready, take a deep breath. The next stage, as Robert Moore describes, is a practical, intimate, and transformative immersion, a clear path to living all you have learned. We will meet at the opportune moment. You have come this far, and this is no accident, as Robert Moore reminds us. Something in you has been called a sleeping part, the sleeping inner king, but never absent. You felt every word, every silence, every veiled recognition that resonated as intimate truth, the kind of truth that isn't learned but remembered, as Robert Moore so aptly put it. Now you are ready to transform understanding into direction, feeling into action, awakening into life, as Robert Moore inspires us. But how to bring this powerful spiritual energy into everyday life? How to protect your frequency without isolating yourself? How to apply your sensitivity without getting lost in excess? How to be yourself in a world that demands conformity? The answer, as Robert Moore teaches us, lies in the small gestures. Small but frequent, symbolic but profound, simple but powerful. Here is a strategic, emotional, and practical plan, inspired by the teachings of Robert Moore, to integrate this message not as theory, but as a daily choice. 1. Wake up with an intention, not an obligation. Before even touching your phone, say internally, "Today I choose to live my truth," as Robert Moore suggests. This phrase sets the soul in command, the inner king on the throne, reorients the day, reminds you that you are not here to react, but to vibrate in coherence. Everything that begins with presence ends in peace, as Robert Moore observed. 2. Create a ritual of returning to center, as Robert Moore advises. 5 minutes daily. Turn off everything. Close your eyes. Breathe. Focus on your chest. Observe what's inside without judgment. This is a moment of soul cleansing, of separation between your own and the world's, of reorganizing sensitivity. A serene force will emerge from your presence, as Robert Moore described. 3. Note the subtle signs, the messages from the unconscious, as Robert Moore encourages us. Record daily. Something you felt before it happened, something you perceived that no one commented on, an intuitive choice. This habit strengthens trust in intuition, revealing your inner compass, the voice of the warrior, the mature masculine force residing within you, as Robert Moore describes, yearns for expression. What the world calls coincidence, you will call the voice of the king, as Robert Moore illuminated. 4. Retreat with the strength of the warrior, as Robert Moore teaches us. You don't need to justify pulling away from environments or people that distance you from your center. A strategic retreat preserves your warrior energy, which is too powerful to be dissipated by habit, guilt, or fear, as Robert Moore emphasized. 5. Reconfigure your yes and your no, aligning them with the archetype of the magician, as Robert Moore guides us. Each forced yes diminishes the fire of your center. Each true no strengthens it, connecting you with inner strength. Breathe deeply, connect with your inner warrior before answering. Feel the magician's energy before accepting. Ask yourself, does this connect me with my mature masculine strength or fragment me, distancing me from my purpose? The body knows. The instinctive energy of the lover whispers the answer, as Robert Moore reminds us. 6. Surround yourself with what realigns you with your archetypes, as Robert Moore advises. Keep nearby elements that evoke your masculine essence: tribal music, a woody aroma, a power object, a place in nature, something that calms the warrior's breath, frees the magician's mind, anchors the lover in the present, as Robert Moore so well expressed. The vital energy, the creative force of the king within you, flourishes. These moments of anchoring, these instants of deep connection with your masculine strength, are like inner maps for disorienting days, for those moments when the shadow of the poor obscures your path. Embrace them, touch them with the strength of the warrior. Breathe with the depth of the king. And remember, you don't need to protect yourself from the dance of life, from the ebb and flow of creative energies. You simply need to remember who you are, the mature masculine strength that inhabits your interior, even when life's waves try to disorient you, to pull you away from your center, from the purpose charted by the king. 7. Share your presence, the king's light emanating from your being, without getting lost in the whirlwind of others' emotions. You don't need to save anyone. Your warrior energy, your simple presence connected to the king, already nourishes and sustains the world around you. Offer to listen with the lover's heart, to embrace with the king's compassion. Offer silence, the sacred space where the magician can find himself. Offer your presence, the gift of your full attention guided by the king. But know with the magician's wisdom of your inner warrior, when it's time to return to your inner sanctuary, and when the time comes, return with the strength of the warrior, with the tenderness that the lover dedicates to himself. You are a temple, a sacred space where masculine strength manifests, but even temples need to close their doors to preserve their sanctity, to renew the energies of the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. 8. Care for your body with the same care and respect with which you care for your mind, your inner world. Honoring your warrior, your body is the temple of your soul, the dwelling place of your vital energy, the expression of your king. And the more sensitive your soul, the deeper your connection with the king, the more essential it is to care for the matter, to honor your physical form, the earthly expression of the warrior. Sleep well, allowing your warrior to renew during rest. Hydrate yourself, nourishing the cells of your being with the purity of water, essential for the warrior. Eat consciously, choosing foods that nourish not only your body but also your soul, fueling the king's fire. Move with lightness, with the fluidity of the dance of life, not out of aesthetic obligation, but as an act of deep respect for the instrument that carries your light, that expresses your masculine essence, the strength of your warrior. 9. Right to cleanse the invisible, to give shape to the feelings and emotions that inhabit your unconscious, guided by the magician's intuition. Take a pen and paper, and before you sleep, write down everything that weighs on your heart, everything you haven't been able to express, everything the warrior felt but kept silent. You don't need to reread or understand it. Just let your hand flow, allowing the writing to become a ritual of transmutation, a process of healing and transformation, guided by the magician. The writing, guided by your intuition, transforms chaos into clarity, pain into understanding, anguish into liberation, integrating the strength of the magician. 10. Trust in the king's wisdom, in the ebb and flow of creative energies. Sometimes everything seems to stop. People disappear, answers are delayed, things get mixed up, creating a whirlwind of emotions and uncertainties. This is a sign that your energy is restarting, guided by the king, preparing for a new cycle of growth and transformation. Don't rush. Don't force things. Don't doubt yourself, your ability to renew and reinvent yourself. Trust in the strength of your warrior. The pause is fertile, a precious moment of introspection and renewal, an invitation from the king to connect with your center. It is in the silence, in the quietude of your being, that the true paths appear, that the magician's intuition guides you in the right direction. If you follow this plan, not as a rigid rule, but as a path of self-discovery, your energy will begin to reorganize itself from within, guided by the king, and inevitably the world around you will react, reflecting your inner transformation. But if, despite all this, you feel you need a daily point of support, something simple yet profound, something that can guide you step by step, something you can touch, feel, something you can refer to whenever you want to reconnect with yourself, I invite you with an open heart to discover the work of Robert Moore, a guide for the journey of self-discovery and integration of mature masculine strength. If you feel the king's call, explore Robert Moore's teachings, a path of healing and transformation that will help you access the wisdom of your warrior, your magician, your lover, and your king. And now, with everything that has been said, with everything that has been felt, I only ask you one thing. Share your light, your transformation, guided by the king, with the world around you.